range. Why are our distributions or shares so low? In addition to the Squamish Nation band-owned businesses, there is also the issue of community economic development initiatives taken up with all First Nations, like the Squamish First Nation, with the government and its corporations across Canada. Agreements have been made for our lands, resources, assets, and people without the proper consent of the people of the Squamish Nation and all other nations across Canada. The government, Crown, in plain view, are using the federal board known as Chief and Council to convert our lands, resources, assets, and people, and this is wrong. It goes against the duty of the Crown vis-a-vis our relationship. We have a de facto treaty-like relationship. This is in an international context, not a land claims policy. In that context, you have to conduct yourself in a certain way. You're not to dispossess us of our lands directly or indirectly. You used to do it directly with Indian agents, like for example with the Amalgamation Agreement, which is a fraudulent document, and for others, treaties, which are also fraudulent. Now what we are seeing and what we know is underway, it's occurring indirectly through your legally incorporated entities. For example, modern-day treaties, land codes, designations, impact benefit agreements, protocol agreements, memorandums of understanding, accords, accommodations, etc. You must stop this. It's your duty to regulate these companies. If you fail to put it in check or fail to listen to what I'm saying today to you, being the government representing the Crown, you're part and parcel of the conspiracy to convert our lands, resources, assets, and people. You're working completely to strip the Indians of the lands and resources in the Squamish Nation as well as others. Our inherent rights are linked and tied into our lands and resources. You are trying to strip that away and leave us with what? Right to vote in a municipal election? No. Not without our specific consent, and asking our federal boards, i.e. Chief and Council, is not our consent. And when you act on that and put in place those fancy contracts and you say you don't care what they misled you on, when you put in place incremental treaty agreements, accommodations, etc., we know what you're doing. We are not stupid. It's wrong. I'm here to put you on notice, to tell you it's not going to work. You cannot achieve this without having us agree to this, and we do not. I put it on the record that we do not agree to this, or our future generations do not agree to this, because I now speak for those. That's my duty today, to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves and for the next generations and those to come. And I do not stand here alone when I say this. I want to help you understand the consequences of what your government and Crown are doing and is involved in. I want to help you understand the consequences you likely don't appreciate. They are very severe for the country. It's not just us that are at risk. The consequences for you are most severe, because if you undermine our relationship, if you proceed with the conversion of our lands, resources, assets, and people, then there are consequences for Canada as a nation. These consequences are on Canada's financial viability, economic security, and stability. And that's not a threat. It's the reality of being an unconstitutional and unlawful nation. There are laws in place. Are we run by the rule of laws or not? You will need to review what I give you in my written submissions and think seriously of what I'm saying today, because that's the question you face now, not the future generations. This is on you. Is this going to be a lawful country or not? Are your relationships going to remain lawful with Indigenous nations? This is your choice, and you decide the future of all Canadians today. And I undertake to provide these recommendations. I have some recommendations I would like to make. So I undertake to provide these following recommendations to you in writing at a later date. Recommendations for Bill C-27. 1. I suggest that the Queen acknowledge her duty to the Indians and her part in the drafting and passing of this piece of legislation. She is in a protectorate role, and she is not to survey the Indians' lands, resources, assets, and people in any way. She needs to remember we are her allies. She is not to convert our lands, resources, assets, people, directly or indirectly. 2. In addition, I also suggest that the Senate and the House of Commons of Canada fulfill their duty. May I remind you that you still need to get meaningful approval and consent from all people, not just a few. And when I'm talking about the people, I mean the grassroots Indian people, not the federal board, Chief and Council, and their say-so. You have a due diligence to meet, so please meet it. 3, I suggest that Canada be a lawful country, and for this country to be lawful, you must respect our relationship, and you must stop facilitating the conversion of our lands, resources, assets, and people vis-a-vis the Crown, the government, your corporations, including the federally appointed boards known as Chief and Council. 4, I suggest that the transparency and accountability also apply to the Queen, the government, corporations, as well as the board, Chief and Council, so that's the same, sorry. 5, I suggest that this piece of legislation also include all First Nations, including the modern-day Treaty First Nations, as without this kind of tool in place, there will be no accountability nor transparency in place for those grassroots people, and this would be a gross injustice. Excuse me. 6, I suggest that the fee be removed for people who request the financial disclosure. Most grassroots First Nations, as you well know, do not have the high-paying jobs to pay a fee to request their finances. It's their finances, give it to them. 7, court remedies needs to be readdressed. Again, grassroots First Nations do not have access to large amounts of funds, so making it a stipulation to bring our matters to the Superior Court if our Chief and Council do not provide the finances puts grassroots people at a disadvantage. This is a gross injustice. Please remove it. This should be free for all people from all nations. 8, the request from grassroots people for their finances should be easy, accessible, and anonymous and provided directly to the person requesting it without charge. That's what I have thus far, and I will make written submissions at a later date.
Thank you very much. We'll start the question.